create the jobs. They want to sneak those raw logs out to Asia. They want to get the biofuels and from the scraps. These don't create jobs. Another thing, I wasn't here when this went in, but in 1999, Governor Kitzhaber granted a timber harvest severance tax exemption for any industrial forest landowner with more than 5,000 acres of land inside the state. Really? So the big guys get out of paying taxes too, but then they will tell you, oh, they're all about their communities. Well, if they're all about their communities, then why don't they have the mill jobs? Why are they sending raw logs out? If they're all about the communities, why are they aerial spraying and poisoning everything? The people, the streams? Why aren't they hiring all these unemployed people to manually pull up the weeds instead of poisoning everybody with aerial spraying? So the point is, the whole thing stinks, and that includes Kitzhaber's state forest deal, where he wants to basically sell the whole state forest now. Well, again, that's our forest, and I don't think it's going to fly. Thanks.
I certainly wish I had an easy answer to that question. I think that whatever happens with ONC lands or with either of those bills is that we need a reasonable, balanced approach to all of our natural resources. It's more than a tree when it's cut down. It's an ecosystem. It cleans our air, maintains our pristine water through watersheds and habitat for plants and animals. I live in a stick-built house, so therefore I'm not totally against lumber. However, our lumber resources need to be sustainably held. Our natural beauty is worth protecting and maintaining. It's not worth being short-sighted and destroying our environment for temporary gain. I just am encouraged by the fact that we are talking about it, that we care about it, and I'm really hopeful that we can find some solutions for the logging issues in Lane County. But I'm also hopeful that we will maintain our beautiful county and the wonderful natural resources that we have here. So for whatever my grandchildren will be able to enjoy and appreciate all that we have in Lane County. Thank you.
Can you take this? No. I don't know. I can't stand in one place sometimes. So, this is a great question, and let me preface it this way. I got to tell you, my grandfather was one of those rare breeds. He was a Jewish Democrat lumberman from Douglas County. I'm going to tell you, we won't see one like that again. He was also Jim Weaver's one of his primary advisors when 1.3 billion board feet used to be harvested off the UNC lands. Let me say that again, 1.3 billion board feet were harvested off those lands. Today we're talking about a bill that's maybe talking about somewhere between 400 and 450 million. That's quite a bit less. And by the way, as one of Senator Wyden's chief advisors representing counties, and I am very proud of that, and will not back down from that whatsoever, I'm pleased by what is moving forward. I think it's a good start in getting this back to where we were. To talk about doubling is doubling the harvest when the harvest almost went down to almost zero. If you talk about doubling, that's not much, especially on public lands. Where's the respect again? But that's okay. I've been heckled worse than that. So we're talking about 425 to 450 million board feet. That's it. That's it, folks. That's a far cry from 1.3 billion board feet. The other piece to this that doesn't get talked about is now that Senator Wyden happens to be next to Senator Reid, probably the most powerful senator back in Washington, D.C., as chairman of the Finance Committee, there's a great opportunity that a permanent revenue stream will be written to see that those dollars come back to these timber counties. We're not Wheeler County, folks, over in Eastern Oregon with a $10 per thousand tax rate. We're Lane County with $1.27. We have to make that up somewhere. So this is not only about jobs, this is about the potential about bringing revenue back to Lane County so we can provide those critical services such as public safety, such as public health, and really give back to our community. Thank you.
I favor a balanced approach to managing a timber resource. I do see it as a timber resource, and I do think it needs to be part of the mix, it needs to be part of the economic mix going forward. We need to protect our old growth, we need to protect water quality, and I would submit that currently, we are currently mismanaging our public forests in a different way than we used to mismanage them. And I'm concerned that we might be one catastrophic forest fire away from the ability to move forward in a collaborative, reasonable way to protect the things we care about, to protect, yes, old growth and water quality, and also to get the revenue that we need from our public lands. The ONC forests were established to provide a revenue stream, or part of the charter of how they were established was that they are to provide a revenue stream for county services that we all depend on. And so locking them up and letting them get to this state of fire danger isn't good for the economy, and it's also not good for the long-term ability to manage the forests sustainably. And when I say sustainably, it needs to be based on science. There's been a lot of fighting and a lot of angry rhetoric and posturing and extreme views expressed in all directions. We need to look to the science to guide us on this. We didn't know when we first were logging, the history of logging and timber that brought us here didn't understand the science of the forest and sustainable forestry the way we are beginning to understand it now. So I believe that, and also as a county commissioner, I don't get to choose, how the federal government, what decisions are made at the federal level on this legislation. It's my understanding that maybe we're going to see something like a compromise between those two bills, and that's what we'll end up with. Well, I think that's at least going to take us a step forward so we can then evaluate what's the next step after that. But currently where we are right now is not a sustainable point, and we are in danger of, again, having something catastrophic happen that could prevent us from creating good, solid, sound, science-based solutions in the future.
So last summer, there were two big fires to the south of us, the Douglas Complex Fire and the Big Windy Complex Fire. We fought those for about 2 months over the summer. Eventually, the rain put them out this winter. Those fires cost us $70 million to fight in those 2 months. Our public safety levy raises less money than that in 5 years. We spent 5 years of our levy in a single summer fighting wildfire that shouldn't have needed to be fought because we are not managing our federal forests. And our federal forests, many of them, particularly the ONC lands, are plantations of second growth. They can't be left alone without any management because what happens to them are the Douglas Complex and Big Windy Complex fires. They're not a native forest that has the resiliency of fire, although even native forests have regenerational burns, depending on where you are, whether it's in the Cascades or in the Coast Range, from 200 years to an 800-year cycle. We need to provide active management that's balanced. We've learned an awful lot about forestry. We've made a lot of mistakes in the past, but we've changed that. We're replacing culverts that were blocking fish passage with our watershed councils. We learned that we weren't supposed to pull all the logs out of a stream. We're actually putting logs back in streams because it's critical to ecosystems. We understand it's important to have a riparian setback now. We've changed some of our harvesting methods. But I can tell you, the lowest paid job on a logging landing is that guy that runs up and down the hill with that Cable, you've probably seen them on Axman, Joker Centers. $18 an hour starting wage, and you do not have to have a high school diploma. That's a family wage job. I know companies that have log landings. They have trouble hiring those people because it's such a difficult and hard piece of work. That's why it pays so well. Those are great paying jobs. We need to get our federal force back to work for us. It can help our rural economy. You look at our Mapleton School District with an 81% free and reduced lunch rate. We need those jobs.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the question was the Fazio plan or the Wyden plan? I'm a little confused. I didn't hear a lot of talk about either one of those in the presentation, but I happen to be the representative for Lane County on the ONC board and know that the ONC Act of 1937 states that the ONC lands will be managed sustainably, and those proceeds, 50%, it used to be 75, but now 50% of those proceeds will go to the counties to help provide general services, because those lands were slated at one time going to be in private ownership. So as a commissioner, I work hard to try to make sure that the county's interest, as long as that law is in place, is served best. And right now, there's been 25 years of effort. Congressman DeFazio is, I believe, close to 30 years in service. And his effort has gotten us about as far along as it's ever gotten in trying to adopt a management plan. It's a very comprehensive plan. It takes the 2.4 million acres of ONC land and takes and puts almost nearly 50% of it into conservation management and protects the old growth and the special lands that provide conservation values to the environment. The remaining land, after you take the riparian zones out, would leave you about 1 million acres of land that you could be actively managed. And it just happens to be that those lands are lands that have been harvested in the past and have been harvested recently through thinnings, and those would be the lands that would be focused on the timber harvest. And it would generate close to, I believe, 450 million board feet, which is close to what the ONC Act says is the minimum threshold of 500 million board feet per year of harvest. So right now, the DeFazio plan is the closest to the ONC, but as was stated, that plan may not receive the president's support, and there's an effort right now of trying to work with Senator Wyden in coming up to a plan that meets the president, senators, in an effort that gets us closer to solving the management plan. And it's not going to be the days that we used to see of billion board feet of harvest, but it could generate upwards of $12 million for Lane County, which would help us provide some very necessary services.
For question number 4, we'll begin with candidate Lycan and followed up by candidate Moore. So question number 4 is, there is a vacuum of good jobs in this area and large employers are moving major departments out of Lane County. What would you do on the short term and on the long term to help generate solid opportunities for student jobs, recent graduate careers, and working middle class families here in Lane County? Once again, that is, there is a vacuum of good jobs in this area and large employers are moving major departments out of Lane County. What would you do on the short term and on the long term to help generate solid opportunities for student jobs, recent graduates' careers, and working middle-class families here in Lane County?
So a question for the audience. How many of you know or have an idea of just how many jobs are created by the typical business in Oregon? About 15. See, Oregon is a state that is small business. I like to call it, it's not small business, you know what we are? We're a state that has businesses that are community-based, family-owned businesses. That's Oregon. That is the typical business in Oregon. And I know that because I've owned 2. My family's been involved in that as well. The most employees I ever had were 25. Boy, I was big. I was more than 15. So the answer to the question is this. You know, there are some incredible opportunities. You can get your education and be educated, go to work for different firms here in Oregon. But better yet, I know there's a lot of creative young folks here at the University of